Shangi Kong Hang Yu To Sho. Let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. Okay. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen tamche dewatang dewe jutang denpa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindra wajuchik, nering chak tang ni tang trawe tang nom chempo la nepa juchik. So good evening to all of you. Nice to see you, Mudisa. Turn on your camera if you can so I can see your gorgeous faces. I prefer that. Lovely to see you. I'm glad you made it. See, it's worth it. I go with my fishing rod and then get you back. I've got this fishing rod. When you all go down the mountain, I pour it and pull you back up, so that you're there. Anyway, today we're going to do Shambhala Wisdom of the Great Eastern Sun, the practical house for enlightened living. And this is part 3. And what I want to say is I've been getting a lot of texts from people to say, really, this has been so helpful in my life. I've really managed to do this and this and this with it. And that's what I want. That's why I want you to interrupt and say whatever you want to say, because I think it's really, really important. But I want to start with a little passage, which is I think it's a beautiful thing by the Reverend Ado Tai Shimano, a Japanese Zen master. He speaks of an unexpected moment, a moment of surprise and gratefulness. Okay, he says, people often ask me how Buddhists answer the question, does God exist? The other day, I was walking along the river. I was suddenly aware of the sun shining through the bare trees, its warmth, its brightness, and all this completely free, completely gratuitous, if you see the sun, of course, simply there. I'll just add to that in parentheses, it wasn't there, simply there for us to enjoy. Without my knowing it, completely spontaneously, my 2 hands came together and I realized I was making gasho. And it occurred to me that this is all that matters, that we can bow, take a deep bow, just that, just that. And I thought that was a very beautiful story, because I think that is exactly what Chogyam Trungpa was trying to say in the Shambhala society, just that, just a moment when you actually, in all your traumas, in all your difficulties, in all your things, just that moment when you suddenly acknowledge something much greater than you are. And Mimi, I want you to tell your story in a minute, because I really think it's a beautiful story. But we're not looking at necessarily changing any particular situation, but rather with the Shambhala vision or view, we see it completely and totally differently. So, I found these these Churchill sayings, which are really quite funny. And Esti, they do make you laugh a bit. He says, a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. And so really that is absolutely true of what we do. And he says, fear is a reaction and courage is a decision. And there were a whole lot of others which are really, some of them were really quite funny. One of them, which was really funny, was, diplomacy is the art of telling people to go to hell in such a way that they ask for directions. He writes a few like that. He had a great sense of humor. Anyway, what I want to say is that it's really very important. And James Lowe, I'm trying to see if I can build up a little bit of a sacred feeling here, because James Lowe said, one hardly ever knows what other people's realization is. So one should treat everyone as if they are a Buddha, with infinite respect, with validation and belief in their potential and their possibility. Now, I was thinking to myself, what if you walked past someone who was sitting in the mud, begging on the side of the street? And what if you actually went and said, "Good morning, Buddha," and you actually bent to them and everything, and they'd go, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm this beggar on the side of the street. You know, what are you greeting me as Buddha?" And you'd say, "But you know, that's just your temporary situation. That's just something you're going through. That's just a little lesson in the schoolroom. But actually, you are a Buddha. So from today, maybe you should start acting as though you were, and maybe your circumstances will change." It's when you can go to that, true nature and see the world through it, even when you're in great difficulties. Now, Mimi, tell your story, because I think it's really important. Just unmute yourself, because I think that yours is such a good practical story, you know. So go for it.
Well, I think it's just to show that there is a part that knows exactly what to do. I was stranded at an airport in Georgia a few days ago. It was towards evening, and the flight, they cancelled the flight. And there were no flights leaving for 3 days. Now I'm alone there in George, and I'm not sure where I'm going to stay. They don't give you any vouchers or anything. Anyway, my mind's saying, this is not such a big deal. You can do it and you'll get a place, but I wasn't calm. I cannot lie. I couldn't exactly see the wider picture. But something in me, and there were no flights leaving. So something in me propelled me to, there was a girl near me and she said, "Well, look, my flight is landing and taking off." It was a completely different airline, the only one that was taking off. So I looked at it, and my daughter phoned me and said, "All right, let me try and get your ticket online. Have you ever tried to book on a flight when they're boarding? They're just about to take off." So what happened was she couldn't do it. It was blocked. And something in me thought, all right, I'll just find Chem Air. That was the airline. Running around this airport, and I managed to get a ticket at the most ridiculous price, but they were literally leaving. They were boarding the plane. So I got that ticket because it was already evening. And then they said, "But you can't take your luggage." My luggage was on another airline. So I thought, well, now this is tricky. But something then pushed me into right front of the other airline. I don't know what everybody must have thought, because there was a huge queue there. I mean, there was chaos at that airport. 4 flights all grounded. So what happened was I pushed to the front. I said, "Look, I need my luggage, or you must get it to Johannesburg." Anyway, my luggage manifested, the whole bag, everything, as I was checking in, because they said, "No, you better go to arrivals and find your luggage. You can't board." Anyway, there came my luggage, and I checked in. The plane was just about to leave the tarmac, but I got on and I got home safe.
You know what? It's amazing. Now, you know, when Mimi told me about it, she said to me, you know, she said, "I was panicked and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I needed to get back, and there were no plans." But she said, something in me reminded me, like what we were doing here, something reminded me that there is this place that knows what to do within you. And if you surrender to it, it knows what to do, even the impossible. And so it really, it happens with me all the time. And it really is an amazing thing to learn. But if you just stay still for a minute, not go into the pandemonium of whatever's happening, just take a moment. And that's what the Shambhala was all about. It was really taking a step back, and then just realizing in that moment there were many, many things. And I've got to survive on that because we're trying to find a home. We can't find it. Everything doesn't seem right or doesn't seem the right place. But I have to go to that other part of me that knows you'll soon see me sitting with the shrine again, in a new place, whatever the case is, because somehow Melanie can't maneuver the situation, but my awakened nature, that primordial dot that we were talking about, can easily do it. Hello, Eugene, can easily do it. So it's really, really important. And I love your story because now that you've experienced that, you do that with everything. You moving, you've got to do that with everything in your life now. You just surrender that part of you. It's really very important. And I wanted to tell you this lovely Zen story of the squashes, and it goes like this. The following story comes from the Edo period in Japan. Behind a temple, there was a field where there were many squashes growing on the vine. One day, a fight broke out among the squashes, and the squashes split up into two groups. You didn't even know that nature also had quarrels, okay? The squashes split up into two groups and made a big racket, shouting at one another. The head priest heard the uproar and, going out to see what was going on, found the squashes quarreling. In his own booming voice, the priest scolded them. Hey, squashes, what are you doing out there fighting? Everyone do zazen. Zazen's that beautiful meditation, he said to the squashes. The priest taught them how to do zazen. Fold your legs like this, sit up, straighten your back and neck. And while the squashes were sitting zazen in the way the priest had taught to them, their anger subsided and they settled down. Then the priest said quietly, everyone, all of you squashes, put your hand on top of your head. When the squashes felt on top of their heads, they found some weird thing attached there. It turned out to be a vine that connected all of them together. This is really strange. We've been here arguing when actually we're all tied together and living just one life. What a mistake. It's just as the priest said. And after that, the squashes all got along with each other quite well. And I think it's a beautiful story because if we look, when we are fighting, when we are going all the time, I read an article by a person who wrote about how terrorist mentalities, how they think, so they grow up with the fact that you should kill everybody except those of your own religion, and you should do it. And then after that, Allah will rejoice and take you into the beautiful virgin territory. Now, imagine, you think about it, and you think about it with a lot of empathy, because imagine you are told this and you are conditioned into this your entire life. When you are a babe in arms, you've got this conditioning. How do you change? How do you change your perspective when you think it's okay to harm and hurt people and everything, because that is what Allah expected of you? How do you change that? And the only way we can really change that in the end is by seeing the vine that connects all of us, that all of us are actually one, and that we are able to be connected if only we would look deeply and if only we would go to that primordial spot. And I think that's what the Shambhala vision is, that everybody does whatever they can for everybody else because we're all so connected. For me, it's so important. And last week we were talking about the early morning depression and dealing with it in the Shambhala training. And depression comes from the setting sun mentality. Now, what I've just told you is the setting sun mentality. When you really, really, really learn, when you're trying to learn, something that goes against the grain, goes against humanity, goes against everything. You know, that's called the setting sun mentality, that you're always looking for the negative in everything instead of seeing that we all are one. We're just going through a great lot of ignorance in a lot of things. And you use discriminating awareness with people. Then you can work with the depression instead of the vision of darkness and death. And I was thinking when I read about this in the Shambhala, you know, why is it, for example, that people want to commit suicide when they're depressed? Because why, you know, actually death is so much harder than life because you can't kid yourself when you're there. So if you've got this whole deep depression that is going to completely overshadow you, then when you go to the other side and you lose even the physical body where you could store it, you're going to find yourself in a much deeper, darker doldrum. And I say to people when they come to me and they say, I don't want to live anymore. I don't like my life. I really don't see any point to it or anything like that. I tell them, think very carefully, because if you go to your death, if you take your life and you go to your death in this state, you're going to actually be overwhelmed by it. And me in my dream state, I have experiences with people who do take their own lives and are completely lost and deluded. And it makes me so terribly sad because I say, hold my hand and let's work it out. Let's work a way. There's got to be a positive way because you have that primordial dot that Chogyam Trungpa talks about in the Shambhala. That is your awakened nature. And, you know, the setting sun mentality just keeps giving you physical and entertainment things and holidays to look forward to. That doesn't help you. I think maybe that depression, the base of depression, even though I know a lot of people feel depressed about certain things in their lives, but I think the basis of depression is a pointlessness of life. When you just can't see the purpose of life. I think we're also lucky that we can see a much deeper purpose of life. But I think that a lot of depressed people, they might have a physical thing that they're depressed about. They might have a chemical imbalance, but maybe they can't really see the point of their lives. Maybe they can't get it. Maybe they can't, they see, you know, day after day, I'm trudging with difficulties, nothing works out. And maybe depression is linked to a fear of examining a meaningless life. You know, I know, and we're going to come to that when there is space in our lives, there are so many people that are so afraid of being alone. I know lots and lots of people that are afraid of being alone and they're scared. And when you get to our kind of age where, you know, it could easily happen to either of you or to someone in your family or something, people are really scared. And I think that what Shambhala, what he's talking about is that we need to find the meaningful thing of our lives without taking into account the full circumstances of your life. So, you know, he said, when you are in a deep depression, and I was saying last week, isn't that moment, the Shambhala fearlessness, okay, the Shambhala fearlessness, okay, and that fearlessness of the warrior stepping on the wobbly staircase, but you step on it, you go and you step on it. Oh, that looks interesting. Okay, you step on the wobbly staircase and you go on with it, even though it's wobbling. You know there's something inside you, that dot, that is driving you, that is giving the torch, that is showing you the particular way. And that's the fearlessness. You have to get your internal life on track, and then the external dissolves. And I think it's really important, because to become a spiritual warrior of Shambhala, this beautiful enlightened kingdom that did exist or does exist or exists within our mind states, whichever way you want to believe it, is, he says, we don't fill up space. A very important point, and you could debate this with me. You don't fill up space, because we don't see space as boredom. I need entertainment, or I need to be doing something. You know, all the mothers that we grew up with, they said, don't sit there, do something. Yeah. And in Buddhism, they say, don't do anything, just sit there, the opposite, the absolute opposite of it. But there's a gap, there's a lull. And we need to move into that lull. It often happens when you lose a partner. There's a huge void and a huge gap. And interestingly enough, I was talking to a friend who's also in that same life circumstance as us. And we were talking about it. And she said, well, how would you feel about being alone? And I said, I wouldn't like it, but I could manage it. Okay, I could manage it, because I'm not afraid to go into the spaciousness, because I know that that nature is always there and I can find it. And it's really, really important, because he says we move graciously into the space. Why can't people? Because they face insecurity, discomfort, and we live our lives trying to create zones of safety, which are always falling apart. Now, what do you feel about that? How do you feel when you're alone? I know it's okay if you've got a day or an hour or something. I know that it's okay to be alone. And I know that some of you have done an alone time amazingly, really amazingly, with courage and everything else. A lot of you. But how? How do you go into that space where it seems at first there's nothing, no thing, nothing is broken down into no thing. So there's nothing in the space. And you really feel afraid, and you think, I'm going to turn on the television, I'm going to look on my phone, I'm going to play some music, because you feel uncomfortable about space. Hello, VM, I didn't even see you earlier. What do you all feel about that? It's very important. You know how many people have got millions of friends, and they have this, your 50th, your 60th, your 80th birthday, and millions of friends, and fill your lives with all your roles and all your things. And then one day, you just have to go into that gap. All looking very, very uncomfortable about it. Talk to me, somebody.
Mel, I don't even think we know anything. We don't really know the space, because we've got social media, Netflix, TV. I mean, I'm so happy being alone for the weekend, but a chunk of that weekend will be filled with Netflix, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean, if I'm sitting here and it's quiet and that, I'm so happy, but I'll put the TV on out of habit, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
So will I often, but I know, I know that from all those months in India, that I had to learn. There were so many times when I was absolutely solo, okay? And lots of people around me spoke different languages and didn't even speak in my language if I would like to go and speak. But you know what? You fill it with a wholeness, with something that gives you the confidence to face your death and your mortality of this little life that you're leading, of these little things. I really watch my life very, very carefully, and I see it goes like this, and it goes like this, and it goes down, and it goes up, and it goes down, and it goes up. And you can't be attached. And you need sometimes to go into that very alone space. And a lot of people find that very, very scary. Anyone want to ask or say, then we're going on with that, You can work as
No, I think based on what you're just saying, there's a difference between alone and lonely.
Okay. What's the
being connected and disconnected? If you're connected to everything, you don't really feel lonely. You might be alone.
very good analogy, yeah. But if you feel connected, but there's no tangible thing there, so you know you're connected, but there's nothing tangible you can hold on to. It's difficult for people. And I'll tell you why. Because in those spacious, open, gap moments, all your inadequacies, all your insecurities, all your stuff fills up. And that's why people always like to be entertained. I've got lots of friends that make arrangements every single weekend, far in advance. I want to make arrangements. If I want to go out on a Saturday evening, I want to make arrangements on Saturday afternoon or something if I feel like it. But it doesn't work with most of our culture. And it's called the setting sun mentality. When you live in a house like me and people entertain in their little complexes and everything, you hear what happens. It starts off, the conversation starts off, quite low key, quite reasonable. And then you can hear, as people drink, it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. And then you can hear the conversation in the house, and people get more stupid and funny and making jokes and things like that. I wonder why. I wonder why we do that. And I wonder why it's so difficult to face yourself when you're there. And do we need to make
you do need both, Mel. You do need society, you do need friends, you do need to let off steam and not take yourself so seriously all the time as well. I mean, if you look at Lama Yeshe, he pokes fun at himself all the time and stuff, and likes a bit of banter. So I think it's just the drinking that's maybe not Buddhist.
Used to like banter,
used to, but I think you do need both. I think your comment earlier about why people can't be alone is because it is facing all of your demons, and boredom and isolation do kind of bring out all of your dark side, because a lot of addictions are because of people being completely isolated and connected and numbing themselves, and that sitting with yourself day in, day in, and your inadequacies or low self-esteem or self-doubt or all that kind of stuff wears and grates on people over time. So it is important to have a community with healthy habits, whether it's hiking or a movie club or a book club. I think you do need both, but you definitely need to carve out that time for reflection and practice.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think we do. And we're not talking about whether or not friends or whether or
But the obsessive chasing of I can't have 1 hour alone, that is a problem. Yes.
Exactly. And he says a genuine renunciation is knowing what to accept and what to reject. And that's amazing, because that's just what you're saying. You know, the dot is taking you on that step. And how can we survive in the world of setting sun? Well, I think, you know, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about sacredness, like that first story with the bow. It's a sacredness that we're looking for, in addition to all the other things. And I don't have a problem with the other things. I don't have a problem with people. And he says in Shambhala, you've got to really embrace all the people that have a completely different view for you. But I want to read you this little story, and it's a very interesting thing about what you would do. This was called The Obstacles in Our Path. In ancient times, a king had a boulder placed on a roadway. Then he hid himself and watched to see if anyone would remove the huge rock. Some of the king's wealthiest merchants and courtiers came by and simply walked around it. Didn't really care that it was in the middle of the street. Many loudly blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear, but none did anything about getting the stone out of the way. Now, it could be a stone, it could be a person in trouble, it could be anything for that matter. Okay, then a peasant came along carrying a load of vegetables. Upon approaching the boulder, the peasant laid down his burden and tried to move the stone to the side of the road. After much pushing and straining, he finally succeeded. He was very happy that he could move it out so that all the people would be able to have it, okay? After the peasant picked up his load of vegetables, he noticed a purse lying in the road where the boulder had been. The purse contained many gold coins and a note from the king, indicating that the gold was for the person who removed the boulder from the roadway. The peasant learned what many of us never understand, that every obstacle presents an opportunity to improve our condition. Now, I'm just saying, we would probably in South Africa, you definitely find boulders in the road and definitely big potholes, and you'd go around them. I wonder how many of us would get together on a weekend and decide to fill them as a community or something. There are some that do it, but
You're not allowed, Mel. City of Joburg will fine you.
well, I don't really care, but the point is, in some places, there are these huge potholes, and they don't even have a notice to warn you, you know, when you're coming with your street. Really, it's time we got that sorted out. But what I'm saying really is that it's a different attitude to life. The Shambhala vision is when you really care for one another and you really are concerned for another, and you make it a very, very sacred experience. And the next thing that he put on his agenda was overcoming physical materialism, which is quite similar to what we said, but he says, letting go is the theme, but it's free from the vision and style of the setting sun. Instead, it's connected with the idea that you are worthy to let go. Someone who has attained the wisdom and skillful means to know how far they can push or develop themselves. So he says the daringness, and he talks a lot about daringness, because we all a little bit scared. We're scared to speak up often. We're scared to say what we want to. He says having that daringness and letting go is connected with skill and training. For example, he says an athlete who's well trained knows how far to go and to let go. When qualified, you still have to push and you still have doubts sometimes, but that athlete knows exactly, well, I don't think what's his name, who in the tennis knows exactly always when to get off the court. But, you know, an athlete really knows how far they can push themselves and how far they can go. And he says, Yeshi is wisdom. Ye means primordial and She means knowing. And he says, and this is what you were talking about at the beginning, Mimi, if you have a sense of primordial knowing, what to do with your body, speech, and mind, then you should let go. He says, letting go is being in tune with the challenging world. You go back to the dot. Letting go is manifesting and giving up your reservation. And he says the Shambhala training is living in the challenge. So when there's a challenge, it's okay. And he takes the body, and he takes the speech, and he takes the mind, and he says, body wisdom. Sometimes on awakening, you look in the mirror and you go, oh God. I mean, you just look in the mirror and you think, oh my goodness, you know, I've put so much weight on. I'm getting so old. I look so awful. My hair looks terrible. This looks terrible. We look in the mirror and he says, but you could look at yourself and pick up on the basic goodness possibilities. He says, you should take the attitude of caring for your body. It's the extension of basic goodness. The Shambhala teachings understand that dignity in one's physical appearance is very important. Now, that really is important, because I was never one who just schlumped around the house all day. You know, I never ever did that, because my mother never did that. My mother always got up. My mother was never a dressing gown person who hung around, you know, in her dressing gown. When my mother got up, she made herself look nice. She'd have a matching scarf, and she'd have her hair nicely done, whatever. And she had that dignity. And I think she gave it to me too, because when I get up in the morning, I always try and look my best. Now, what Chogyam Trungpa is saying in the Shambhala body wisdom is that your physical appearance is very important, and you should put some dignity into it. You should put your shoulders back. You should put a certain amount of dignity into your physical appearance. You should always look nice. You should always have clean clothes. You should always make the best of your appearance, whether you're fat, thin, or whatever. I'm going to throw it out and you tell me what you think, because it's very interesting. Then he says speech wisdom. I'll get the three and then you can debate with me. He says, in the vision of the great eastern sun, which is the Shambhala, we need to tell the truth, not bend it to make you look better. He says, you waste a lot of time not saying what you feel. He says, and speech is also connected to goodness. In the Shambhala world, you speak gently with dignity, but you speak your truth. Now, that's a very important thing, because I think if you live in a world of encouragement, it makes such a difference. You know, when parents encourage you to speak up, or to say your truth, or say, just tell me and then it'll be okay. But so many people grow up so afraid. So they tell a lie to the teacher, and they tell a lie to their parents, because it makes them look better and they'll get into less trouble. You think about the speech wisdom. And this little story is a very interesting one too. A group of frogs was traveling through the woods, and two of them fell in a deep pit. All the other frogs gathered around the pit. When they saw how deep the pit was, they told the two frogs they were as good as dead. The two frogs ignored the comments and tried to jump out of the pit with all their might. The other frogs kept telling them, stop, you're as good as dead, you'll never be able to get out of that pit. Finally, one of the frogs took heed to what the other frogs were saying and gave up, and he fell down and died. The other frog continued to jump as hard as he could. Once again, the crowd of frogs yelled at him to stop the pain and just jump. He jumped even harder, and he finally made it out. When he got out, the other frog said, did you not hear us? The frog explained to them that he was deaf, and that he thought they were encouraging him all the time. Okay? I like that story, because he was deaf. He couldn't hear anything. He could just see them shouting with their little legs, okay? And he just assumed that they were saying to him, move it, get out of the pit, you can do it, don't give up like the other one. You think that's funny, Ke? You know what? It's really very, very true. Because your speech wisdom, you know, I think my own opinion, and maybe that does fit with the Shambhala wisdom, is I always try and encourage people. So when people make a little bit of an effort, I try and encourage them. You know, great, come on, do it. Hello, nice to see you. You know, that kind of thing. But a lot of people don't do that at all. And I think your speech wisdom is really, really, really important. I think that people should look at you and be magnetized by you in a lot of ways and really be encouraged by you. Just let me get the mind wisdom, then I'll throw it out. He says the mind wisdom, we lack confidence in our own decisions about many things in our lives. He says we need to trust in our existence and what it's about. Our lack of confidence is a form of ignorance, ignoring the truth about things. Why is this happening to me? He says an ignorance is indecisive, which is uncertainty about how to conduct ourselves. He says the genuine reference point is pure understanding that basic goodness does exist. That's such a help to know that basic goodness does exist, even if somebody is doing something awful. There is basic goodness. And he says the dot is fearlessness. Fundamental goodness is already there. So you begin to appreciate yourself. You are capable of working with others, and wealth and possessions will never relieve our suffering, never. So the point is, what he's trying to say here is that just what Mimi was saying at the beginning, we need to trust that there is a part of us that knows. And if you listen quietly, you know, think about it, how Tulku Urgent Rinpoche explains it. He says, your life and the mind, the human mind that you use, is like one grain in a sand pit. Your true nature of mind is like all the grains in that sand pit. Now, why is it that we only listen to that one grain when it knows so little? It doesn't have the know-how. It doesn't know what to accept and what to reject. It doesn't know that what you're going through is really something you created. And this is an amazing opportunity for you to open portal to unity, opportunity for you to learn and clear away that imprint. But we have to get to the part that knows. And it doesn't come so easily. It takes quite a long time. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment or ask or say, but I think it's really important. How do we get to trust in what he calls the primordial dot in the sky? That's your true nature. You know, how do you get to trust in it? How do you get to take your ordinary life with all its implications and its little kind of insular attitudes and everything, and throw it open to your cosmic primordial consciousness? Difficult.
You can only do it through practice and meditation.
Practice and meditation.
But like what you're saying now is kind of like my theme playing out this year, because my journey in life has been a lot to do with worthiness and not feeling worth. Like so like this year, like I'm really like turning a corner. So, and for me, it's like but not in the cocky, ego-driven worth, but like I realized like how much I've actually robbed people of like saying what you needed to say, or people wanting to get to know you, but you may be feeling insecure in yourself, and you could have added value to somebody's life in a time and place when they needed it, and all of that kind of stuff. So like I think like, so of course we try to be egoless in Buddhism, which is great because we don't want that ego-driven, Trump-driven kind of ego. But I think if you've done your work, you've checked your motivations, you really try to be a good human and be compassionate to everybody, you must also celebrate in the wonder that is you, because you also have a purpose here. If you try to connect with the primordial wisdom wherever you can, and you see opportunities to make a difference, like, don't doubt in yourself. I think
Absolutely. That is his main message. Because whatever you are doing is just a temporary, transient little play act. And you're just going to have that temporary, transient play act, and then it's all over. So it's so important to concentrate, to put the spotlight on what's the most important purpose in my life. What am I doing here? How did mindsets get to Shambhala? How did they get to be enlightened? How did they get to have enlightened leaders? Why can't we have an enlightened leader? I mean, how come we haven't got an enlightened leader leading us? I think maybe Mandela was somebody who, if he wouldn't have had all the extra circumstances in the end, he probably would have been quite an enlightened leader. And I think his secretary, Zelda Lagrange, or whatever her name is, Lagrange, however you say, I think I've never read it, but I saw that she did like a whole podcast on all the things she'd learned from here. That's so beautiful. I find that so moving and so touching. And I also find that if a man had spent 27 years in prison and not have resentment and revenge and and all of that kind of thing, but actually even talk about meditating and being kind to people, then it's absolutely amazing. It really is amazing. But we can do that. But we've got to be able to have confidence that not only are we Melanie and Martin and Kerry and Modisa and Kim and that, and we're not only that human being, we are much, much more. And the wisdom from all our incarnations is right there for you to tap into if you really, really want to. And can we get to Shambhala? Of course we can, easily, because it's just a state of mind. And when you find that state of mind, then people who've got the same state of mind come together. And that's called a Buddha field or an awakened field or a mind state. That's all it is, that you find yourself. And very beautifully, and I was looking at my notes of James Lowe when he was talking about the mandala of Guru Rinpoche. Now, I work with that mandala morning, noon, and night. So I'm very, very, very sensitive to that whole mandala of Guru Rinpoche and what it means that that mandala is there to really help and serve people. And what I've been doing with a lot of people who are going through a tremendous amount of suffering is I've been asking them to link with that mandala and offer something in exchange for getting your life into its real order. Now, James Lowe said, when he was talking about it, the book he wrote was Being Guru Rinpoche. And then he said, eventually what takes one's fancy also captivates others, releasing inspiration and energy. It is marvelous, for it reveals the synergy of the mandala, the collaborative, effortless effort of getting on with it, being fully in it, up for it, longing for it, living for it, filled and emptied by it all at the same time. And then he goes on to say, Dharma, which is the Buddhist teaching, is the great it, the ungraspable revelation that returns us to ourselves, subverting ordinary identity by dropping us back into the groundless ground, which is always emerging as this or that. The groundless ground is our essence, the dot, the primordial consciousness. And from the groundless ground, all the other things get expressed. And so everything that you're seeing is just an expression of the ground. Then why is it negative and awful? It's not really negative and awful. It's just the way we perceive it. But if we were able to get into that Shambhala mindset, it would be different. And I love that explanation, because I live in that mandala and I ask people, give your offering, and then you ask for what you're needing in your life. Put it right and use that cosmic dot, that primordial consciousness, that Buddha nature to help you through all the things you've got to get. People looking for jobs, people trying to be inspired. You know, you've got to believe that within you, you've got that nature. And if you don't believe that, and you believe you're just this little cog in a wheel, you're just this little person, you've got nothing to give, look at all the other people that are doing, you really can't go forward. And oh, shame, you've got to go. Okay, Esti, that's fine. You know, so he talks about the cosmic sneeze. Now, the cosmic sneeze is very, very, because he says the dot is primordial. It means free from the stains of habitual patterns, free from our childhood, our education, our family genetics, free from trials and errors of daily life. No neuroses. That, he calls it a cosmic sneeze. That primordial dot has no neurosis. It is pure goodness. Whenever there is a junction, now we're talking about that gap, but we're talking about a junction before experience becomes hot or cold, good or bad, the primordial dot calls it. All the you come to a moment when you see something, when you experience something, when you know something, and then a moment later, the intellect comes and actually intervenes and gives a whole explanation about everything. Before the intellect intervenes, before the human being intervenes, there's a cosmic sneeze, a tissue. Hello, I know what to accept and what to reject. And then the mind goes in, yeah, but what if this doesn't work out? And yeah, how will I be able to do this? And this is impossible. The moment when something happens, before the intellect intervenes, before the human intervenes, is the moment you know. And he calls it the cosmic sneeze. And I really like it. Okay. Any comments, any questions? Because it's really important, you know. It's really, really important for you to understand this, because that cosmic sneeze, we are so busy making ourselves secure, okay, making ourselves trying to be a particular way. We lose that immediate connection, that moment when we know, and then the human intellect comes in, and then it's gone. The cosmic sneeze is gone. That moment is unconditional goodness. It hasn't got the neuroses. It hasn't got your family genetics. It hasn't got your problems. It hasn't got your human emotions. It's absolutely free. But unfortunately, it only lasts for a cosmic sneeze, and then it's gone. Your intellect intervenes. It's very, very, very interesting. Kim, did you want to say something, even though I know your internet's so bad, because you keep on going? No. Anyone want to? Yeah, Mimi.
No, honestly, I think for myself, it passed a good number of years, as you know. It's just, you know, that cosmic sneeze, and at the end of the day, you've got to have that absolute trust in yourself to know exactly the difference between when that cosmic sneeze happens and then the talking matter comes in, and to stop the talking matter and follow the sneeze.
It's exactly like that. But it's so difficult because we miss the moment. Because as we come in, you know, as a child comes into a temple, they behold all the beautiful colors and everything. So do we. But then we go, I wonder what that is. I wonder how come they put so much red here. We miss the fresh, open, cosmic sneeze. And he says, as human beings, we have a tremendous bond, a connection. And are we ready to discover the great eastern sun and be delivered from the degraded situation of the setting sun? He says, when you put the dot and the practice of warriorship and meditation together, you will know in big capital letters the best way to conduct yourself. The dot is the potential to do anything. We're going to help others regardless of their workability. You're going to find a way that they are. Like Kerry, when you're working with children, you know, and sometimes there's a child that is just so pathetic in the eyes of, you know, how society and their opportunities and their background and everything. And you find something, you find a workability to touch right into their hearts. We need conviction in the primordial dot, conviction in the cosmic sneeze to be able to do it. And that is difficult because we don't have the faith in it. Now let's do some meditation unless anybody wants to say. Yes.
I have a question. So basically, in talking earlier that we are pretty much very distracted. That's what leads us to be like we are.
Yes.
But how do we shift from being distracted to being relaxed, which will lead to all this openness and space? Because we think, oh, I'm going to spend the afternoon watching Netflix, that's going to help you relax. But actually, it's not relaxing.
No, it's not. And you know what? You take it all so seriously. And when there's an individual in it that's suffering, I cry, you know, it doesn't at all relax you. Let's do the relaxation now in the meditation. I just want to hear what Mimi said. I'll answer your question with the meditation. Mim?
Mel, am I unmuted? No.
No,
Can you hear?
we can hear you.
Look, the Buddhist gates always, they say that before you speak, let the words pass through three gates. I'm sure you know it. Firstly, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Those are the gates that you should pass through before you speak.
Yeah, excellent. I forgot about those three. I used to use them long ago. But it's very, very beautiful. And that really is true. But the thing is, we're so quick and we're so quick because of our insecurity, because we've got to answer. We've got to have an answer for someone. We've got to say an untruth because that makes us look better. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And I want you to draw from this Shambhala wisdom, a way to be, a sacred way, a really sacred way. And distraction is one of the unsacred parts of it. So let's do a little meditation. I'm just going to mute you all so we don't hear your noises. So I want you to just sit. You know, I like it if you sit in a meditation posture, but I also don't mind if you're tired and you want to walk a little bit in your room. That's also really fine. I'm very happy with that. If you want to walk slowly while we're doing the meditation, that's fine. But I want you to just come to this moment. This moment is the cosmic sneeze. You either get it openly or you don't. Now, the important thing is that a lot of people say, yeah, but I can't help my thoughts whenever I sit, when my back is straight even, and I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out, but the thoughts are pouring like a waterfall, and I can't stop them. Don't stop them. Don't even try. Let them just pour out. That relaxation is so important. When you get to the higher teachings of Dzogchen, there's a practice called Trekcho. And Trekcho is way beyond shamatha. Shamatha is when you're forcing yourself to completely get undistracted. Trekcho is when you are absolutely relaxed. But even though you are relaxed, you are not distracted. So it's like taking a whole lot of sticks that are bundled together and just letting them fall. And whatever happens, no matter how many thoughts, no matter how many angers, no matter how many insecurities, just relax into them. You're not getting rid of them. You're not doing anything with them. You're just allowing, opening, coming to that cosmic dot, which is never affected by all these hundreds of thoughts and feelings and turmoils and anxieties. It's fresh. It's awake. It's sunshine. It's pureness. It's luminous. And most of all, it's clarity and awareness. It does not matter how many thoughts or feelings you have. You just relax into them completely and totally. When you do, the cosmic sneeze can happen. The aha moment. When we have that aha, we are totally present, awake, aware, a light, shining, radiant, luminous. Nothing matters. Doesn't matter all the problems of your life, all the anxieties are just together in one moment. That's the moment when you know what to do. And it is done through you, not from you. Feel that spaciousness, openness, absolutely no intervention. Just let everything everything be as it is, your most precious moment, primordial moment. Now, nothing to hold on to, nothing to let go. Everything just expresses itself by itself. And you are free. You are awake. You are a light. You are luminous. You are magnetic. You are free. You are present. Nothing takes you away. It's all fresh and free and open, spacious. Nothing distracts you. Just carries on. And you are in that beautiful space. Just I was laughing because my little dog was drinking gallons and gallons of water. So as I was sitting and telling you, it was lap, 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 lap. And I thought, it's just, you know, I thought to myself, it's not distracting me. He's just enjoying the water going through his thirsty body, you know. It's not a distraction. Nothing's a distraction. If you see it in that sacred moment, how beautiful it actually is. Any questions, any things? Otherwise, we'll go on to another topic quickly, but there's not much time. Anybody want to ask or say? I love to hear your comments because I want you to take this and to know, not to take teaching and think this is theoretical. I'll put it in my notes, I'll put it here, but to know exactly what you are doing is so important. You should, in a day, have many poignant, sacred moments. Like just that of the dog drinking his water. You know, I could have thought to myself, oh, Yeshi, do you have to drink your water just when I'm giving a quiet, lovely meditation? But I used that. That was so beautiful. Just listening to the water going into his tummy and how fresh it felt. So you do that with everything. You really do that with everything in your life. Even difficult work situations that we all get into. So let's just do one more thing tonight, and that is called discipline in the 4 seasons. That's one of his other Shambhala vision teachings. He says, there is tremendous self-destructive and perpetual pain that comes from missing the point in the sun-setting world. That world cultivates pleasure, indulging in sense perceptions, mindless entertainment, indulging the ego, everything you said originally, Eugene. People don't get involved in these indulgences, but have to be humble and work with people who are going through it, not putting them down. He says we need to work with the 4 seasons, which is very beautiful because we were all laughing because Kim was freezing her butt off and then boiling hot when she immigrated back here. He says we need to work with the 4 seasons because the 4 seasons are a natural hierarchy in the world of Shambhala. He says the winter is cold and internal and makes us ponder our lives. So when you're very cold and you're all dressed up and you've got lots of coats and you're indoors and everything, it's a beautiful cold time to ponder. Really an important point. He says, spring, when the spring starts, you appreciate the blossoms, you appreciate the plants and the flowers starting to blossom. He says then warm or hot summer, appreciation, but sometimes it's so hot, you feel lethargic and your whole being is... But maybe if you are a sporty kind of person, that's a beautiful time in the summer when the air is hot. But I do find the summer, you know, I used to love the summer. Now I much prefer it when it's spring and not summer because I find it really quite debilitating in the summer. Autumn restricts our summer indulgence. And the 4 seasons have a natural hierarchy of restriction, openness, celebration, practicality, and then again restriction. And he says, even in your meditation, you experience the 4 seasons. He says it's really, really important. And I took this other Zen story, because I haven't got too many of my story books here in this place, so I have to find them in this book. But this was, I thought, was a very, very interesting story. And that was, just think about something. I've got a thing always. When my husband says, oh, I brought these beautiful nectarines from Woolworths today, and I know that it is the middle of the winter, and that nectarines are not the natural fruit of the season. I never buy the unnatural fruit, the imported fruits. Now listen to the story. At the store, flowers bloom out of season, and all kinds of fruits and vegetables are on display throughout the year. In the modern world, the thrill of seeing flowers bloom after a long winter, or the feeling of tenderness towards the last remaining flowers of autumns, cannot be experienced because you can get everything at any time, you know, because that's what's happened in our world. From the beginning, we are cut off from the natural environment which cultivates those emotions in our hearts. And it all starts with the idea that we can get anything we want with money. Our desires, always wanting to see the flowers we love and eat our favorite fruits and vegetables, become entangled with another common human desire. That is to make profits. To fulfill those desires, scientific technology has been utilized without control. In the end, everything is made available for commercial sale, resulting in an inherently lifeless world. We must not forget that people living in such a situation will gradually grow more materialistic and unfeeling. Their hearts become, as it were, plasticized and have no room for the Buddhist truth that life and death as they are is nirvana. I thought that was a very interesting story, very interesting teaching, because the seasons have their natural flow. The nature has its natural flow. And man is intervening with that ecosystem all the time. And what's happening is it takes you further and further away from the natural ebb and flow of your natural being and of the cosmic dot, which knows what should be at any particular time. So I'm just throwing this out because he writes the chapter on discipline in the 4 seasons. And each season is in its right place. If you do something like Kim and you go from 2 degrees and you arrive in 32 degrees. But that's because aeroplanes exist. If we didn't have aeroplanes, then you wouldn't be able to go from that climate to that climate in a couple of hours. So we've done it to ourselves with the material world. We've taken ourselves out of that natural environment. Now, I remember Lama Yeshe Rinpoche telling me always about their childhood and how it was. There was this big extended family with not much materially. They had these little things. They had their yaks that they had to attend to. The children did their work in nature. They had lots of mothers. If your mother couldn't feed you, your auntie fed you, you know, your auntie would have breast milk. It was actually a wonderful, wonderful life that was free and that was so in communion with nature. Now we've lost that. And I think what he's trying to say in the Shambhala teaching is to really come back to the 4 seasons, not only in life, but in the garden, but in your life and in your spirituality and in your meditation. Sometimes in your meditation, it's a time to go inwards. And it's funny because when the weather's really cold, it's probably quite a lot easier not to be distracted and to be, you know, inwards a lot. Then when the hot summer comes, you know, like this morning I was sitting and doing my practice and so glad that a little wind kept blowing the curtains on me. It's important. It's important to be in communion with nature, to be in communion with your true self. And we've changed that such a lot. So there's a lot more that he gives, and I will give it to you next week. Next week's the last week before the opening of the temple, and then the week after, we're going to have Lama Zangmo come on the Tuesday night to Randburg. So what I'll ask is if maybe I can, if I can get there, if I can come and bring the Zoom, you know, and give you a link on the Zoom. And, you know, as many of us as can get there will get there. But at least, but it's nice when we get together sometimes, you know, it's nice to actually get together physically and everything. But I think that's really what I want to say for tonight. I've got a lot more, but I think that I want you to ponder this. And most of all, to go back to how I started with the bow, with the Japanese bow, because it's really, really, really important that bow, just that sacred moment. And I want you this week to see if you can have a lot more sacred moments in your life. Just a moment when you and someone else touch hearts and you get them and they get you. We have so little of that in our world, you know. People are so busy. They're so racing. They're so busy working out how they're going to do it. We miss those beautiful cosmic sneeze moments, and we need to find them again. So let's dedicate. I know Fiona had to go and do her work, so we'll just dedicate anyway. I haven't got that English, so we'll just do it. I want to just dedicate to all sentient beings who are suffering, to the ones who were in the plane crashes, to the ones who've been in wars, to the ones who've been captured, to the ones who've lost family members. I mean, in the DRC now, 14 soldiers were killed. For what? I can't even see it. And I think of each of those families, and if there's any merit in tonight's teaching, may they all be able to receive just a little bit of that Shambhala wisdom, which brings us all together like the vine of the squashes. Sonamdiye tamjezi. Jeganachi bala drupaye sipe sole doa do warsho. So I'm going to switch off, and then if anybody wants to ask anything, you're welcome.